most organizations have the ability for their workforce to work from home, and also have, sort of agreed to have more flexible schedules where, you can homeschool at the same time as you are able to, sort of like do your work and do other things as well. Virtual also means global opportunities, right? So now I don't need to be a worker in a particular country. I can work anywhere in the world because virtual has made that possible for me, right? And with all of this, there's a higher demand for tech workers as well as highly skilled talent, which is scarce all over the world, not just in Nigeria. So that means that especially highly skilled employees have more options, right? And have the ability to actually demand more flexibility and ensure higher levels of work-life balance and higher compensations as well. So this is why it's an employee's market, right? The employee can dictate the terms. The employee can sort of say, this is what we expect, this is what we want. And the employer has to either follow suit or just get less adequate talent. So where does this talent want to work, right? So when you look at sort of global companies, these are some of the companies that immediately come to mind when you ask young people where they would want to work. It's definitely your Google, it's definitely your Uber, your Netflix, your Spotify. And the question is, what does these companies have in common, right? Why are they so attractive to millennials and Gen Zers, right? What is the thing that really attracts them? And this is sort of like a multifold answer. You have different criteria that attract them. So the first thing is innovation, right? So these companies are constantly generating new ideas, generating new value, and creating products that are just amazing. They are agile and simple. So all of them sort of use their own agile manifesto and agile methodologies. And we'll talk more about what agile is in a little bit. They're all data driven, right? So the decisions that they made are based on insights and data. They're customer centric and they sort of co-design together with the customer. So they interact closely with customers with regards to product development and, sort of just create a customer experience that makes the customer feel like they are part of the development process and part of the company. They have a particular way of working. So most of them have small teams that are united in a common purpose, right? They also have people-centric cultures, which means that people really determine how the organization evolves. They are collaborative, so collaboration within the organization and outside of the organization with external partners is something that they really, really value and really push. And then the last thing, they're obviously flexible and fast. So they're constantly able to reshape the organization, reshape what they're working on, allow high levels of flexibility with regards to working hours, working from home or working from anywhere really, and just allowing people to find that work-life balance that allows them to, really perform at their highest. So the question is, why digital, why agile, right? So to go back to the main topic, right? So driving organizational change through digital transformation. Digital transformation is basically a shift from traditional to tech. So in a feat to softening the economic growth outlook, increased competition and disruptive enabling technologies, a lot of organizations across different industries are really looking for new ways to increase shareholder value. And how do you increase that shareholder value? You need to really figure out like, what can you do to affect the bottom line and how do you future-proof your organization? So companies are really starting to transform. They are shifting a lot of their processes from traditional to digital. They are also sort of ensuring that their employees are equipped for that shift and equipped for that change that they have to go through, right? And they're really looking at how do you create, new digital distribution channels, for example, right? So how do you create an omni-channel environment? How do you also meet customer expectations, right? So customer expectation and customer behavior has significantly changed. And I'm sure each and one of you can sort of attest to that in terms of how you've changed your use and, sort of expectations of technology and of the brands that you engage with, right? Whether it is your bank or whether it is, your online store, or you want to make a doctor's appointment, or your child is in school, you're expecting some level of technology integration. And when that is not there, you start questioning why that isn't there, right? And this means that companies really need to start seeing themselves as technology companies and not as traditional companies, right? So future-proof organizations really need to look at three things, right? And these three things are the three core pillars of digital transformation. The first is processes, right? So you look at your internal workings, right? What are the things that you can optimize? So you really look around innovation, you look at speed, you look at dynamism. How do you create those things within your organization by really looking at the processes that you have, and by making sure that these processes are optimized in a way that they take you closer to your goal. Then you have customer experience, right? So this is the second pillar. There's customer centricity and really flexibility. So how do you provide this seamless and consistently high quality service to your customers, so that the customer journey, sort of is easy, and that the customer journey sort of stays the same across the different channels. So whether I start my customer journey by calling someone on the phone, or whether I start it on your mobile app, I should have the same access to the same resources. I should be able to, do the same things and get the same results at the end of the day. So how do you ensure that that customer journey is there, first of all, and that it's optimized in a way that you've really put the customer and the needs of the customer at the heart of everything that you're doing? And the third pillar is people, right? Technology in general does not work if people don't accept it and don't embrace it and don't use it, right? So the biggest sort of point of failure for technology projects has always and will always remain to be people, right? Which is why you usually, as part of your bringing in new technology, you would have a change management plan, you would have, some kind of training, you would have different types of things that you do in order to really make sure that you carry your people along, right? So in digital transformation, you really need to start thinking about a very people-centric approach. And you also have to look at how can you automate all the menial tasks that you have within your organization in order to free up people and their time in a way that they can contribute much more value to the organization, as well as feel much more valued because they're doing valuable work, and ensuring that they have the right skills to do so. So this is a McKinsey study, right, that really looked at CEOs from top companies. And since the start of the pandemic, the question was basically, how has your company or business area adopted to the following technology trends and changes? So digitization of supply chain, right? So you can see that a small percentage says, okay, we've significantly accelerated. Some say we've somewhat accelerated. The majority say that they haven't really done anything to change, or it's not applicable, or there's not been any adoption. And then there are some people who say that they've decelerated, right? The digitization of your customer channels. So here you can see that there are organizations that have significantly accelerated, somewhat accelerated, right? And then some that 47% that haven't really changed at all. Now, if you look at the digitization of employee interaction, right, and collaboration, you will see suddenly the scales changing significantly, right? So you have 45% where digitization of employee interaction and collaboration has been significantly accelerated or somewhat accelerated. So 85% of the companies have really accelerated their digitization when it comes to employee interaction and collaboration. And the same thing when you look at the automation of processes using artificial intelligence, 67% of companies have accelerated automation and integrated artificial intelligence into their processes, right? So both of these things actually are focused on people, right? And this is why it's important that people who work within HR are able to really understand how digital transformation works and how an agile organization needs to be structured in order to make the right recommendations and ensure that they really sort of are able to show how an organization should be structured, right? So if the recommendations for how your organization needs to be structured, what you need to do in terms of digital doesn't come from HR because HR is not empowered enough or not knowledgeable enough about digital transformation, then you have a really big problem because the people who are supposed to be driving people are not doing that. And people is, as I said, the significant pillar of digital transformation as a whole. So here we have the first case study. So we will be talking about Spotify. So Spotify is a music streaming company, right? So Spotify is really popular as a music player and well known for providing original and limitless collection of music content. It was launched in 2008, so it's fairly established. And has now become a large company with nearly 1,600 employees. The slogan that they have at their company is think it, build it, ship it, tweak it. So they owe their success to their deeply rooted agile methodologies and utilization of the agile scaling methods that they've created in their own way, right? So they've created something called the Spotify Tribe, which was first implemented in 2013 and has been optimized ever since. So Spotify's Agile Manifesto values are individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So here you can clearly see how important people are within this organization, right? Working software over comprehensive documentation. So here you also look at how quickly they want to go to market, right? So how quickly what is really the driver of product is some obviously working technology. Then customer collaboration over contract negotiation, right? So here again, you really see that customer experience is highlighted and really, really important. Responding to change over following a plan. And I think that we've all seen that you as an organization in today's world that is ever changing, especially when it comes to technology, you must be agile enough to really adapt to changes very quickly. If not, you're sort of dead in the water. And then obviously the last part is company culture and network. And again, this speaks to people, right? So it's really, really important that everybody really understands how integrated and ingrained the people part of digital transformation is in all of these, sort of values that Spotify has. So they also have some guiding pillars that they use to guide their agile methodology. So the first one is continuous improvement. So Spotify employees must continuously improve both personally and in the wider organization. So that basically means that they really put a lot of emphasis on learning and development, right? And this can happen in many, many ways. But if you're not upskilling your talent, there's no way that you can future-proof your workforce, right? Iterative development. So Spotify believes in short learning cycles to validate assumptions as quickly as possible, right? So they want to fail fast, get back up and iterate and be really, really quick on their feet. Now, this is another thing that's really important when it comes to organizational structures, because again, this is led by people, right? Processes are defined by people. So you have to have the people with the right mindset who are really thinking about how do you create this iterative development approach, right? How do we go to market as fast as possible? How do we have these short learning cycles? How do we make sure that we're not spending too much time at perfection, right? Without necessarily compromising the quality of what we're building. So it's really, really important. Then you have simplicity. So scaling is key to Spotify's success. Simplicity guides them during the scaling process, whether it's for technical solutions or methods of working and organizing the organization, right? So it has to be simple. If your structures are complicated, if your processes are complicated, take a blank page and really, sort of go in and say, how do we move away from this, right? How do we, if we were to create this organization today, what would we do differently? How would we structure it? And then start implementing that, right? Trust. At Spotify, we trust our people and teams to make informed decisions about the way they work and what they work on, right? Now, this is a big one, right? It means that there's autonomy almost for employees, where as a team, we can decide what we're going to work on and what we think is going to be best for the company. Because they do a lot of co-creation with their customers, there is still a guide, right? And obviously there's the company manifesto, the company vision and mission of what they want to achieve. So it has to be in line with that, of course. But on one hand, it also means that you are creating an organization of people who have a very, very high sense of ownership, right? And who feel really, really invested in what it is that you are doing, because you trust them so much to make the right decisions and go in the right direction. They also really value servant leadership. So Spotify managers are focused on coaching, mentorship, and solving impediments rather than telling people what to do, right? So they don't micromanage. They ensure that they build up employees to the level where they can work on their own and where they contribute value at every single point, right? So you can really see how important people are with each of these guiding pillars that I have talked about. So this is just a quick example of how Spotify is structured. So Spotify has squads, right? And that's the only part of this structure that I'm going to go into. There are some really great resources if you want to go deeper into this case study and learn more about how, sort of the chapters, the guilds, and the tribes are structured, right? But we'll just talk about squads, right? Because I think this is a very important part. So the squads are self-organized teams that are designed to feel like mini startups, right? And this is critical. They've basically, because they have so much trust and they have so much autonomy and they want people to work on what they think is the right thing, they've really designed their organization in a way that they are basically like mini startups. So they sit together and they have the skills and tools that are needed to design, develop, test, and release products, right? So usually you would have a unit of just tech people, but in Spotify, they have the product people, they have the marketing people, they have the technology people, they have the quality assurance people, they have the people who do the QA testing, right? So everybody is co-located, which means that when I'm talking about marketing, the developers are listening. When the other person is talking about, how we're going to go to market, or the issues in the QA testing, or issues in the product design, everybody is listening, right? And everybody can chip in. And because people come from different perspectives, it actually works much better than having isolated teams. They also use Agile methodology of their choice, right? So there are different Agile frameworks, like Scrum, for example, and they can choose which one they want to use within their squad, right? So the company doesn't dictate, oh, you must use this particular methodology or framework. Each squad has a long-term mission, such as building and improving the Android client, for example, right? But within that, they still have a lot of autonomy to say, what exactly do we want to improve here? What are the key things that we think customers would enjoy if we changed or if we improved? What are the things? So they study customer feedback, they engage with the customers so that they can co-create on many, many levels, right? This is also some pictures of how the Spotify offices look, right? So you can see, very funky. The squads have dedicated work and collaboration areas, right? So each squad has that. Walls are whiteboards, so you can write on any surface in that office, right? They have huddle rooms and they have open plan and fun workspaces, right? A lot of the time, we don't really think of how our workspaces look as part of what we think shapes the organization, especially here in Nigeria, right? But when you look at how a lot of the fintechs and the tech companies have done it, right? They all have offices that look very similar to this, right? Where you can sit on a beanbag on the floor and do your work, right? Because the type of talent that they're trying to attract requires that type of flexibility. That's where creative juices flow, right? They don't want to sit at a desk. They don't want to wear a shirt and tie. They don't want to, have to be formal, right? They are on a first name basis. They go and hang out, they go and drink, they play football together, they do all sorts of different things together. And a lot of the work is focused on play, experimentation, being creative, exchanging ideas, right? And then there's time allotted to doing the actual work, right? But it is not sort of like, oh, you come in the morning, you have to clock in, clock out in order to, do stuff. And obviously with remote working, it's become even more flexible where you basically choose your working hours. Then we'll go to the second case study, right? So now we've talked about a super modern technology company. And from here, we're going to jump into a more traditional industry, right? So ING is a Dutch banking group, and they shifted their traditional organization to an agile organizational model in 9 months, using digital transformation, and that was in 2015, right? They are still continuously, so digital transformation, even though here it says 9 months, right? But it's something that never really ends. So obviously there's that first really big sort of, we need to shift from traditional to agile or to digital, but you will continuously are on that journey to, because technology is changing so fast, because the way that the customer behaves is changing so fast, the expectations of the customer, the competition is changing. So it's a never-ending journey, really. ING realized that they have to become a technology company that is operating in the financial service business, right? If not, they're dead in the water. And we're seeing this with a lot of the major banks in Nigeria as well, where there is that shift that is happening. ING's core focus shifted from the bottom line to customer centricity and improved service delivery, right? So as a company, they really shifted the way that they think about value creation, right? So your bottom line will automatically get better if you focus on your customer and if you improve your service delivery, right? So if we go back to the pillars of digital transformation, you had processes, you had customer experience, and you had people, right? So this part really speaks to processes and customer experience, right? Because you need that customer-centric thinking in order to really transform the organization. And that automatically helps with your bottom line. They created multidisciplinary teams, so same type of squads that Spotify has, that comprise of a mix of marketing specialists, product and commercial specialists, user experience designers, data analysts, and IT engineers. And they all focus on solving the client's needs, right? So everybody is focused with like tunnel vision on how do we address our customers' needs. There are also no fixed structures anymore in ING, right? So the organization constantly evolves. And I think that this is something that it requires a really big mindset shift in leadership, right? So you need the board to be on board, you need C-level management to be on board, and then you need to carry on along the entire organization to really shift in thinking, right? I think in Nigeria, we have a lot of hierarchies, right, that we like. We like, people, sort of saying, ma, sa, we're not really open to first name basis in many organizations, right? You see people who can't even look into the eyes of their immediate boss because they're scared, or because that's just how that organizational dynamic is. But with that, you don't have a working environment that really promotes progress. So not having fixed structures allows you to really be flexible and allows you to really sort of transform and change as may be required. So critical success factors for ING were the implementation of an agile model, right? So they basically said, this is how we're going to do it. The appropriate organizational structure and clarity around new roles and governance, right? So when you're doing digital transformation, there are going to be a lot of new roles. A lot of the old roles will fall to the wayside, right? So this does not necessarily mean that you have to let go of people, but this really means that you have to think about how you can repurpose people and how you can reskill people in order to do the right thing, right? Also adopting a DevOps approach, right? So they basically develop software focused on operations. So software is designed with discrete business requirements and system integration in mind, right? So they don't design software for, they don't just go around designing things. They really focus on what are our current business requirements and how does that integrate into the system. They also have teams that jointly build and test releases and maintain new digital applications more frequently and more efficiently, right? So they're really focused on how do you make sure that the customer experience never suffers. Everyone is responsible for stability of the code, right? So whether you're in marketing or you're in product design or you're the actual engineer, you are still responsible for how well this application is working, right? And then you have new releases that go live every 2 weeks instead of having 4 to 6 big releases a year, right? So this is another thing. So the same way that Spotify also has sort of like quick to market, let's fail fast, ING adopted those strategies. And as a bank, that is extremely risky, but it's a model that the fintechs have been using from the get-go, right? They roll something out, they test, they see whether it's working, they look at how customers are engaging. If it's not being accepted by the customer, or if they get too many complaints, they take it back, fix it, or completely take it out, right? So that flexibility and agility within the organization was key to their success. They also created an agile performance management model where they focused on how people deal with knowledge and ensuring there is a good mix between the different layers of knowledge and expertise, right? So how do you ensure learning and development is happening, but also have a good mix of how do you bring experts within the organization, right? And how do you transfer knowledge from those thought leaders and experts to other people within the organization? Cultural change was a big one here because the culture has to reflect the agile mindset in every aspect of the organization, right? So from how the organization looks to how leadership is to what the dynamics are between teams and people and things like that. They also created an extended period of onboarding, right? So if you come from traditional banking into ING, obviously you have very different expectations and sort of a very different mindset. So they sort of need to brainwash you before you can fit into this new agile organization and have this agile mindset. So the new hires spend a lot of time in customer service as well as loyalty in the loyalty department so that they can learn about customer centricity, right? The more you know about what the customer requires, the better you can do your job, right? They also had a peer-to-peer hiring approach where teams are hired by peers and other teams to ensure higher level of diversity, right? And this really helps with sort of making sure that you're recruiting the right way. So recruiting also helps with retention. Then you also, they have an open and collaborative office layout. So to ensure more informational interaction between employees, they created this new design to their offices. So the big question is, are you ready to transform? Are you ready to become one of these organizations that is agile, innovative, and invests in their people, right? If you are, you will have to adjust your practices to capture potential productivity gains from remote work, agile organizational structures, rethink recruitment and retention strategies, as well as compensation and benefits. And here is sort of a list of the things that transforming your organization will require, right? So what you need to think about from a people perspective, you need to really think about flexibility, right? How do we create flexibility in our workspace? How to create flexible work hours? How do we enable remote work? What else can we do to create that flexibility so that the flexibility is not based on a set of rules, but the flexibility can be adopted to the individual, right? So I am a very different person from Peter, for example, right? We probably have very different lifestyles. We have different things that are important to us. We have different hours of the day that we are productive. So how can we still work within the same organization and be productive together, but tailor that to our individual, sort of lives? Then you have workspaces, right? So open and collaborative workspaces are a must-have. You have culture, and that I think is one of the hardest things, right? So how do you create this fun, innovative, relaxed, and in-depth culture with in-depth onboarding? How do you make sure that this culture is something that everybody has really bought into, both from board all the way to, sort of the most junior people? You need board and C-level support, right? So you have to have champions that are pushing this. Digital transformation and human capital development have to be driven strategically from the board and C-level. You have to really rethink your hiring approach. Retention starts with recruiting. So a peer-driven hiring approach is one of the ways to do it. Or also promoting from within, right? So how do you find people within the organization that you can upskill, that you can train, that you can get ready for that next level, so that you have succession and that they also see a clear career path for them in terms of, okay, I'm now mid-level management, where can I go from here, right? Teams and organizational structures. So really thinking about how do you restructure the organization, smaller teams, agile teams, having flat structures, multidisciplinary teams that sit together. All of these things are really key to creating that, sort of environment that allows your organization to really be successful. Then obviously a big one is compensation, perks, and benefits. So ensuring that you have competitive compensation, and this, especially for technology jobs, is a hard one because of our exchange rate currently and because of remote work, right? So as a developer, I can work anywhere in the world. I can charge in a foreign currency and work less hours than I would in a full-time job here in Nigeria. So employers really need to think about that and really think about, how do I still attract the same really good developer, and how can I pay them? And sometimes compensation is not necessarily money, right? So you have to really think about, how do you create new and differentiated employee perks and benefits, right? How do you go away from the traditional, we have an HMO, we have this, to actual benefits and things that the employee really wants, and that are important to them, right? This could be additional training, this could be being able to take trips abroad, this could be so many different things, right? What supporting housing loans and stuff like that. How do you ensure that you add value to your employees without really going above and beyond the budget that you have for compensation?